Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Happy Sunday. We're
Yeah.
back.
Yes, we're
Yeah.
here like a bad penny. We're back.
We are here for chapters 6 and 7 of The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholtz. Hopefully I keep meaning to look at how you pronounce her name. That's pitiful, isn't it?
It's probably right.
That's right. I've
It
heard other
sounds
people
right,
pronounce it
but
that way.
Okay.
I'm not an authority, but I've been watching some stuff on YouTube too, that
I
feature
should
her.
Yeah, I should watch her say her own name. That way I'll know how to say it because that's one of my
probably.
pet peeves is I hate getting people's name pronounced incorrectly. It's just,
Yeah.
just my pet peeve.
I just noticed
Anyway,
I got a lot of glare behind me today. I'm wondering as it gets like further into the year and the sun is getting more on
yeah.
that side, if I'm gonna have to change where I'm sitting because it's like
He's got a
like
halo.
it's 2 in
Yeah.
the afternoon here, and so the sun's still pretty high up in the sky.
Or maybe we can move it till later.
Well, I could probably just rotate myself.
Rotate.
All
Well, my
right.
daughter is getting married in less than 2 weeks, and then she's gonna be moving out, and then her room is fair game.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
And so I'm probably gonna set myself up down there, and I'll have a lot better control over my lighting.
Yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
nice. It's always nice to have a new office, but the kid
Yeah.
moving out, it's kind of hard, I'm sure.
Yeah, kinda sad,
Oh.
but,
All right.
happy for her.
Oh,
If
for sure.
anybody wants to join today, we have put the link in all of our chats. So feel free, if you've read the book, you can come in and join the panel. And we
That's
had
right.
Garth last week. So that was nice. He really complimented our
Yeah.
crew here. So
Yeah,
I
I think
like
so
that.
too. He's got
Well,
a
he
really
is so
calming
well spoken, and
he has a
Yeah.
very
he really needs
calming
to do a
spirit about
channel.
him.
Yes. And added a little masculinity to it.
Yes, which
Oh,
is always good.
speaking of, here he is.
Ah, yay! Hey, Charlie.
Awesome.
Hey,
Welcome back.
Charlie.
Good
I
to have
still
you
have to
back,
call you
Charlie.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Welcome to the bright side.
Yep, from the dark side.
Yeah, interesting couple of chapters this time. That's for sure.
Yes, it was.
Very.
Yes, it was.
Long.
Oh, yeah.
Long. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I was like, how many
basically,
pages is this?
in a sentence for me, it would be men aren't the only thing we should base our recommendations on. And also the Mediterranean diet, not all, not cut and dry good, which we know this, but mainstream medicine doesn't seem to know this. So how would you guys sum it up in a sentence?
Oh boy. Yeah, that was
It's
a
a really
good.
concise
I
sentence.
think I think for me, more than the specific diets themselves, it's been the interesting thing about how what she is doing is laying out how our thinking has evolved over the last maybe century or so, and how we as a society have come to accept things that maybe we wouldn't have accepted before.
Mhm.
But it's just a series of events, the incorporation of the media, the industry, and it's just been very interesting to see how all of these things work together to create impressions upon us as a society so that we're open to accepting things that we wouldn't have normally accepted. And a lot of European countries and other countries are not accepting. So I think that probably applies to the whole book, not necessarily to this chapter, but I think as I've been going chapter by chapter, that's one of the things that's jumped out at me is that she's really showing this evolution of thought. So.
Yes.
I agree. And with the passage of time, people who remember the past I mean, they're no longer around. So like things
Right.
that were true and that people, in other words, like people used to know that carbs, things like potatoes and sugar and stuff like that made you gain weight, for example. And people used to know that I mean, we didn't eat vegetables near what we're told we did. But of course, as time has passed and the generations have changed, it's gotten to where there's nobody around who really remembers these things, and you don't really know these things until you start looking into old studies or old data, or maybe people who had written about the time period, that kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
really illuminating to see just how things have changed. And like, even for me, just like when I was expecting my daughter back in 1984 and into 85, I had gestational diabetes, and they told me not to eat the white foods, to eat meat and vegetables. And but now that is like taboo. You don't tell people to eat low carb. You just recommend insulin. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really stunning how just in a generation things change even.
Yeah, and we're kind of right now still kind of stuck in this generation maybe that we grew up in, where the whole low fat or keeping the fat low is kind of the norm. That was what was taught. And so now trying to unbreak those ideas is going to be the big challenge. Yeah. So
What about you, Charlie? What do you think?
It's a good exposition and a lot of weird, interesting stories between chapters 6 and 7. So chapter 6, from chapter 5, it, went to Washington and that consensus conference that we talked about last time. And then, it went into the low fat consumer craze of the 1980s and 90s that we all kind of remember. So like Frosted Flakes had the American Heart Association check
Right.
label. At one point I had to go on Google to find a picture of that. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess because it's low in fat and low in saturated fat, it got the,
And Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts, right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she mentioned Pop-Tarts. What was it? The lower fat version of Pop-Tarts got the check mark.
Yes, I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow.
But
one thing I found interesting too was that the AHA in 1970 had decided, and of course, our old friend Jerry Stamler, 2 years before in 1968, the AHA was concerned about lowering fat so much, and they advised against it. They were concerned about the refined carbohydrates in particular. And then it's funny, just a couple years later, when our friend Jerry Stamler came back, and was a part of the committee again, that all of a sudden they wanted to reduce the fat limit to 35%, which of course now sounds like a lot, but even so, and they totally reversed their position on that without concern for the carbohydrates. And I just found that, I was like, wow. So like the difference of just having one person and that influence. But of course, I saw that with Ansel Keys too.
Right. Well, I was interested when I was reading, like in the very beginning of chapter 6, it talks about in the 1970s, and this was kind of like the whole evolution of thought. Like the Americans were already starting to question accepted norms in the 70s. That she said that the public interest advocates were turning up ugly truths about consumer items, from cigarettes to pesticides, that had long been assumed safe. So the questioning of basic foodstuffs like eggs, milk, meat seems understandable as part of the skepticism. And so that was really kind of enlightening for me, because it's like, I wondered, like, how do we get there? Like, how do we get to the point where we're willing to put basic food items like meat and eggs and milk in the trash can all of a sudden? So it was that skepticism that we already are having about other things. And so I think it's so true that you can very much throw the baby out with the bathwater when you're starting to see that where things aren't as what we've been told about our consumer products, and we can be the same way about pharmaceutical products. When we start to see that there's a problem and it's been kind of pushed under the rug and not shared with us, then we start to like say, okay, well, what else is it that we have been lied to about? And it's really easy to fall into the trap of just throwing it all out. But the interesting thing is that they were probably, I'm assuming probably because there was a group at that point that was starting to reveal all of these problems, like with the cigarettes and with the pesticides, they were probably more apt to listen to them about things like our diet. And just because they're pointing out problems with our food and with the cigarettes doesn't mean that they're right about, the meat and the fat and all of that. So that was really, interesting. It's like, okay, I can see how things metamorphosized and how our minds became more and more open to questioning.
Well, I can see that because I question everything now.
I do too. And I
Yeah.
have to catch myself and make
Mhm.
sure that, I'm not automatically assuming that something is bad, but actually doing the digging. But, in certain clinical trials, it's really important. In clinical trials, it's important they have to be kind of guilty until proven innocent. And in these nutritional studies that they've done, they kind of they flip-flopped the science. They were like innocent until proven guilty. Like our hypothesis is true until it's proven false. And so there was so much of that going on. And and then taking like the studies that they did that were basically high risk middle class men is the study participants, and then they extracted the results to women and children. And that's where this chapter
Yeah.
kind of picks up, is like,
I
first
love
of all, that's what they did.
I love how they gave the example of basically a family sitting at a table and they're feeding everybody according to the guidelines that would suit one person best, which in that case was the father, a middle-aged
Right.
man. And then they said, well, what if we had fed them all to the guidelines that maybe the baby of the family,
Yeah,
would
everybody has breast
everybody
milk.
be on breast milk?
That was funny. Yeah, that was really funny because it's like,
And
it doesn't, you got to flip it around. Does it make sense the other
yeah.
way? Like, does it make sense that you should feed a growing child the same thing that a 40-some 50-year-old man is going to eat? No.
And then,
But
I just think it's this all goes back to what I've known for a while and talked about probably on here before, but um that generation, like I feel like our parents' generation, they trusted and still trust the medical system so much. I
very
don't
much.
know where that comes from. But I find that, a lot, I mean, my parents personally weren't really like that, but I just find that a lot of people of that generation, they tend to just have so much faith in the medical system. And if their doctor says it, it's gospel. I mean,
Mhm.
they're going to do it regardless. And I've just always had a questioning nature to
Yeah, me
me.
too.
And, I'm not just going to, like, I'll take your advice. I want your advice. I respect that you have authority on this topic, and I respect that you have many years of schooling behind you. But I want to know for myself, like the pros and the cons, and weigh it out. And I just feel like a lot of times you don't get that with like our parents' generation.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's a huge generalization, but
Well, and it's good to question. I think it's good that our generation is doing more of that. And, it's been, I think the healthcare system has been in the under the microscope under the last few years, with the
yeah,
pandemic. And I think there's so many people now are more questioning than they were before. So I think that's a good thing. I just have
yeah.
to really be careful. I don't do what they did, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to question,
Yes.
but you need to make sure that when you question, you're getting answers from reliable sources, you know?
And
Well, it's
don't
hard
give
to
credit
define what's
yourself.
reliable. Yeah, look into it yourself, because the reliable sources, I think the definition of a reliable source in my mind has changed.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
has.
Like I used to consider the
Multiple
CDC, the
sources.
FDA, all these government agencies, I used to consider them to be
Yeah.
reliable sources, and I don't anymore.
Yeah,
know.
it can be difficult, honestly. But knowing how to interpret studies, as far as knowing which studies actually mean something, and yeah, that can be
Or just looking at what the study actually says, because we've talked
Mhm.
about this before, that the headline or the press release will say
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing, but then you get
Right.
into reading it and actually, or in some cases with some people, they actually look at the data. People like Bart Kay or
Mhm.
Dr. Berry and even Dr. Baker, different ones, they'll actually look at the data and what is actually, like, what the macronutrients actually were, what was the diet, how, and really get into what the data was, and come to find out the study doesn't really reveal what the headline says.
Yeah.
So it's hard for the average person, because it's the old classic, eggs are bad this week, now they're good, and going back and forth, coffee is beneficial, now it's not, and just bacon is this, and now it's not, and people are just, they don't, and I think honestly now, really, for the most part, people just kind of ignore it, because it's just not feasible. It's like, how
Yeah.
can something be so beneficial one week, and then another study comes out and now it's not?
Right.
It just
It's
doesn't make
just
sense, and
it's
it's saturation, and it's just to the point to where people they just tune it out because it's noise.
Yeah.
there's so many studies out there, and like, we shouldn't have to be scientists to know how to, to actually look into the true study to get accurate information. I don't
Well, that's
know. I
why
don't
we
know where this is going to lead, especially with AI coming in, and we're
Oh,
not
yeah.
going to know
Mhm.
what's what pretty soon.
Well, even with AI, I was listening to a journalist talk about going on Chat GPT and actually asking a question of Chat GPT, got an answer that she knew was incorrect because she'd researched this thoroughly, had a back and forth debate with Chat GPT. Chat GPT actually ended up admitting that they were wrong. Their initial statement was wrong,
Huh.
and that she was correct. But who does that, right? So how many people would have stopped just with the initial answer to that question?
Yeah.
So you can't even assume that AI is accurate. We have to do our own.
No, I mean, I wasn't assuming AI
Right.
was accurate,
But there's a lot of people, we're
because
maybe
there's
moving
so
into people assuming it's going to be accurate,
well,
and it's not.
AI is probably getting its information from, the trusted sources, and
Correct.
Mhm. Dr.
Absolutely.
Berry did a video. He had a discussion with one of the AI. I think it was Chat GPT. And this video came out, it's been a little while. It's been maybe 3 or 4 months. And since I have time passage disorder, that may be totally inaccurate, because sometimes I can't, something will seem like it was last week and it was 2 months ago. But anyway, he finally got it to admit, and it was about, uh, the vitamin in carrots that's supposed to be good for your eyes, and that the human body can't, um, the
The
human body can't
A or beta
process it to
carotene.
use it. Yeah, yeah, beta carotene, and that in actuality, the proper form was the other form that was in meat. But he had this whole discussion with the Chat GPT, and finally, I mean, it was like pulling teeth. It
Right.
really was. And it was kind of a lengthy thing, but yeah, that it was very interesting to watch that video. But it
Oh,
does make
yeah.
you wonder. And just like with anything, you can there can be things that are put out by AI that are not true,
Mm.
because they're kind of guided by humans, and it's like how it's asked or how it's said, or um, like images, for example, now they're having a problem with images that are portraying things that are totally untrue. And of course, it's an election cycle. So how do you even know what to believe? That's the thing. You
Yeah,
just
it
don't
gets
know.
challenging.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to how she pointed out, like the just like the studies done on men ended up being, carried over to women and children. Originally, too, these studies were, looking at saturated fat, and they ended up making that mental leap to drawing the conclusion about all fat. So initially, even though the studies weren't accurate and correct, they were just looking at animal fats. And then in the 80s, that leap was made to, okay, we need to be avoiding all fats. And I mean, that's quite a leap. And there was no science behind that leap at all. And just a little bit before that, the American Heart Association had been warning against reducing fat too much because they were concerned about people over consuming carbohydrates.
Yep.
And then, like you said, with Stamler coming back around, he kind of he influenced them, and they kind of backed down on what their recommendation was for fat. It's funny because she mentioned the Snackwells phenomenon. Do you guys remember when everything was
I do.
Snackwells?
Yes.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh, yes. So we started eating all these
100
supposed-
calorie packs.
yeah, 100-calorie packs. Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. But the fact, and one of the things that was interesting too was the talk about cholesterol in children.
Yes.
And they were measuring cholesterol in children, and there was a point where they were talking about testing cord blood.
Yeah. I was stunned about that. I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I'm glad
like-
it didn't go that far.
Yeah,
Wasn't that in the
the-
70s too?
Pardon me?
Wasn't that in the 70s?
60s.
I believe so.
It
Yeah.
says in the
Yeah.
60s they had
I can't believe they did that so long ago.
they
That-
actually started in the 60s putting at-risk children as young as 4 years old on cholesterol-lowering diets and also giving them cholestyramine.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I'm like, seriously? And then there was a proposal to do mass screening of cord blood, so that their whole thought was, and they never did any sort of longitudinal studies saying, does high cholesterol in children actually turn into at risk? Does it put them at risk? Do they still have high cholesterol as adults? And later she mentioned, no, they don't. It doesn't carry forward. And yet there was I wonder how many parents put their kids, let their kids go on these medications.
And basically they said they would have to be on them for the rest of their lives.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
That is
So
so crazy.
well, the things that we've done,
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
weird.
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So I know that she spent a lot of time talking about Ornish's studies. He was like the big one when it comes to the vegetarian and the vegan diets. So she spent quite a bit of time talking about him and his influence over our diet. What was he like? A student of Pritikin?
What, Ornish?
Ornish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then his study, which was touted as supposedly demonstrating the benefit of his diet, and of course, when you get into looking at it, there were 22 patients, and there were so many lifestyle interventions like smoking cessation, meditation, exercise. There were so many other factors that were present, that changes that they had to make, or that they as a part of that program. And then also, of course, he had talked about the increase in blood flow that supposedly happened with this, and he had quoted 300% improvement. But then in reality, Gould, who was somebody who had reviewed, GOULD, had reviewed the study, and actually it was really only 10 to 15%.
Right.
But then there's the debate about whether the the widening of arteries would even cause such a benefit to begin with, too.
So when I was reading this, I was thinking about so as a prior cardiac nurse, we know that our vessels, they can expand, they can dilate or clamp down, right?
They're
So
Mhm.
I'm
supposed
sitting
to.
there thinking, how could he even it just didn't seem like it would be an accurate
I was
thing.
thinking the
Mhm.
same thing because part of our nervous system, I mean, that's part of our natural nervous system is for our artery to constrict and to relax. I mean, that's just normal for us for that to be what we do. And shunting blood flow to different parts of the body is also part of our natural ability. In order to do that, you got to kind of constrict in one area and relax in another. It's just like
Yeah. And
it.
our body is very good at this. It's a very,
Yes,
we
it's a
can
natural
help them
thing.
out. We can help people out with medications, but what somebody's body's doing because if they're low on blood, they constrict. And I mean, there's so many different things that can cause constriction or dilation
Right.
of the blood vessels.
And they
But
just took a snapshot of the coronary artery
yeah.
vessels. Yeah, I know. I was
Um,
thinking the same thing. And it was interesting though. They said that ultimately the studies did say that people that have narrower vessels versus, more room in their vessels doesn't necessarily impact their mortality and the
yeah.
longevity. So, which I thought was interesting. And I know that we stent people when their vessels are getting too narrow, but we don't stent everybody. They have to have a certain amount of, occlusion before they get stented. But yeah, but it was interesting too with the all the work that Ornish did, and she talked about 1998, this university nutrition professor from Tufts University, Alice Lichtenstein, and then a colleague reviewed the very low diet, that low fat diet that the American Heart Association was recommending. And they said that even though the LDL cholesterol dropped, so did the HDL cholesterol, and the triglycerides went way up, sometimes as much as 70%.
Mhm.
And it's like this was kind of a common thing. And also then they also were looking at nutritional vitamin deficiencies. And so there were these, like, the focus, even with the children's studies, they were like, okay, well, their LDL cholesterol went down, but they ended up with nutritional deficiencies. And, then people ended up at higher risk because their HDL went down and their triglycerides went up. But yet those things weren't even discussed in
Mm-mm.
when the studies were published. They may have been kind of glossed over, but they didn't impact the actual results of these studies. They still were focused so much on LDL cholesterol. And it's like it took decades. They couldn't get it out of their minds that LDL cholesterol was not the thing to measure your heart, your risk for your heart. And so they were putting people at much higher risk. And they had studied too these the Maasai and is it Akikuyu?
Yeah,
It's
Akikuyu.
Akakuyu. So,
Akikuyu. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know I was pronouncing it right, but you're talking about like the meat-based diet versus the Maasai who drank mostly milk, right? And milk and blood and meat. And they said that the Akikuyu men were more likely to suffer bone deformities, cavities, anemia, lung disease, ulcer, and blood disorders. The Maasai were more likely to contract rheumatoid arthritis, which is interesting. It makes me wonder if it was all the blood they were drinking. I don't know.
I wondered about that. I didn't know what could have caused it, but I'm like, well, they're not consuming much. Maybe the dairy was inflammatory to
Possibly the
them.
dairy. Yeah. The Maasai men, though, were average 5 inches taller and 23 pounds heavier, which was muscle. And the
Mhm.
Maasai had narrower waist, broad shoulders, possessed far more muscle, and the Akakayu were generally less fit and had little capacity for manual labor. So these are like such blatant examples of the differences, but yet that wasn't discussed at all.
Nope,
You know,
not at all.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. When I read that, I was like, why would I mean, it's like ding ding ding, big red truck here. It's very obvious.
well, it's the bias is just that it just permeated everybody's decision making. And it's like these two men, right? Ansel
Mhm.
Keys and Stamler, they seem to be the biggest influencers. But they mentioned that the pediatricians were the holdout, at least initially, against the recommendations about the low-fat diet. But even later, the pediatricians gave in.
Yeah, they were pushed into it, but they did fight it for a long time.
Yes, they
So-
did. Yeah.
To their
they
credit,
did.
they tried, but I guess
And I
they were just strong-armed into it.
I can't
Yeah.
remember which part it was or what the exact numbers were, but I remember being really surprised at how little fat American children actually get.
Right.
Yes, and that's like no wonder they are having so many developmental problems and problems concentrating and learning in school. I mean, I didn't realize it was that low of fat either.
I'm
It
gonna
was a
try to find
ridiculously
it.
low number.
Yeah.
And I was
Oh.
just stunned. And all these parents think they're doing the right thing.
Well, and then they were saying that the children were turned up in hospitals with failure to thrive.
Mhm.
But then when they went on to higher fat diets, they gained weight and they
Oh.
began to grow.
Okay, so here's one example of it. This is not like the total number, but it's this section. I could probably find it. But basically, one of the little infant, it's a Earth's Best Vegetable Turkey Dinner. And it's
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the few dinner options with meat. It only has 1% fat.
Yes, I
This
was
is what we're
so
feeding our babies.
surprised.
And then like Gambian babies were eating rice with ground nut sauce at 18% fat.
Right.
And let's see here. Yeah, it was just talking about how big the difference is. I mean, it's a wonder that our babies can even think, a lot of parents, especially, back several years ago, were giving their children skim milk and 2%, no
Right.
more than 2% milk. And
Mhm.
I don't know, like when people get WIC and stuff, the things that they're allowed to buy with that,
Right.
it's just a bunch of garbage. It's just a bunch of like cereal and rice and
And they
I
changed
mean
it.
rice
The way
and
they
beans,
changed it.
okay, fine. I won't call that garbage, but I wouldn't want to eat a bunch of it. But like as far as meat and stuff,
Well, and didn't she say that the WIC program won't cover whole milk anymore?
Yep, that's right. It
That
won't.
it changed to only covering like 2% or less
yeah, 2%.
of milk, which is the type that babies won't thrive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean the takeaway is you got to feed your babies high, fat for them to grow and develop.
And so this is what children of lower income families are basically just, that's what they're destined to eat, because that's what they allow them to buy on that program. So, how are you supposed to get smarter? How are you supposed to have the energy to, to learn and build your proper, build your brain into out of the components it's supposed to have with that little fat. Your brain needs a lot of fat. We know this. This is common knowledge. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Well,
Remember watching a video by Dr. Anthony Chafee. He's talking about why we are carnivores, and he's talking about how a lot of organs seem to coordinate together to use fat and stuff. So when you set it into policy like a low fat thing, it seems like we're running an experiment about, okay, we seem to have evolved to rely on, fat. What happens if we cut it out? What happens, they're trying to come up with studies on, okay, what happens in children if you cut out fat? What happens in women if you cut out fat? I wonder, other subpopulations, like what happens to mental health if you cut out fat. That's kind of what Dr. Georgia Ede and Dr. Chris Palmer are kind of exploring right now. So,
Right.
so it seems to be one big experiment that at least those of us in this group have kind of opted out of. So because kind of set the policy first, even though most people think that when you set policy, that must be some like really robust, convincing evidence behind it. But they tried to run these studies after the fact, hoping it would, turn up, but it hasn't done that consistently. See, I mean, even with the Dean Ornish study in the 1990s, you have like 4 interventions. So was it the diet, exercise, smoking cessation, or exercise? So, so I think that's just kind of the most shocking thing is, we're running a long-term population experiment on what happens when you cut out, an evolutionary macronutrient to our health, to different populations and stuff. So I thought that was the most striking thing that I just kept thinking about as I read this chapter.
Yeah, it's kind of alarming and it's very unnerving. And I think back to after World War II, we brought all these German scientists over to the United States. And I know that there was all this, you hear about them saying, we're going to defeat America from within. It makes me wonder if this isn't part of it, just, because it seems like it's the scientists who are supposed to be working on our behalf that are withholding the truth about these studies. And it's like, because obviously there's so much information, and Nina Teicholtz was able to find it. She was able to dig it up, and it seems like it's right out there that show absolute contradictory information, but yet nobody publishes it. Nobody talks about it. I get real cynical and I'm like, how can that be an accident? It almost seems like it would be, they'd have to kind of agree, or there's some pressure from somewhere to just suppress the truth. And
I do think that some of these people, and of course I lean toward skepticism on a lot of things, kind of like our cousins from the 70s did. But it's like you really stop and think that I think that a population is much easier to control when they're sick, addicted, fighting amongst themselves. I mean, there are multiple facets to this whole thing, and it's about control. It's how you control the population. And I mean, since the beginning of time, since the beginning, I would like to say probably since the beginning of agriculture, that the people who ruled the land, so to speak, I mean, that was how they controlled their people, through fear and the people didn't have the meats, and we had talked about before last week, the whole Robin Hood story was about where they couldn't hunt meat on the king's land. It wasn't so, I mean, the people were eating basically bread and gruel and what you would call slave or peasant food. So I just don't think that it's ever been in the powers that be's best interest for the general population to be well fed, well nourished, healthy, because then suddenly they're not that easy to control anymore.
Yeah.
I don't really go that deep into like an actual conspiracy. I tend to want to think the best, and that most of them have our best interest, what they think are our best interests at heart. but it becomes really difficult, the more that you learn.
It's a
Uh,
hard sell. It gets to be a hard sell
Mhm.
to be
yeah,
convinced that they want our
there,
best interest.
and the problem is this is not just one big entity. This is so
Right.
many millions of different places where this information's coming from, different people paying for the studies, different people that may be easily manipulated into monetarily into saying, whatever they need to say to get their money. And
Mm.
so, it just seems like a big old mess, and I almost wish that we had like um one source where if information can't make it into this unless it's completely vetted, that way we can know what we can trust. But
Well, it's hard to find an independent,
yeah,
it has to be an independent, not having any conflicts of interest. And that is just like, I don't think we have that anymore.
no, we don't. And
I think that we used to.
I've always thought it was incredibly sad that we are still relearning things that our great 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 grandparents learned years and years and years ago. Like that should just be an established thing. We should just know that, it's it feels like we're reinventing the wheel with every generation, like every few generations. Well, we've completely forgotten or just not even heard about what our grandparents knew. And
Well,
we should be building on things, not having to totally relearn that. Oh, by the way, kids, natural foods, meat, eggs, I'm going to throw vegetables in there, y'all.
Yeah.
Don't get mad. But, natural foods are the
whole
best.
food.
Our
Mhm.
grandparents knew that. Their grandparents knew that. Why? Why do we have to just reinvent the wheel? And it just seems like such a waste of, like, why can't we learn like AI, just keep building on what we
I feel
know?
like it's just money driven, because the industry seems to be controlling the narrative more than, the way our grandparents used to be. It's like I feel like industry feels like we need to keep using technology to get better and to get smarter, and we're not going to, we as a society want to be constantly improving, and there's certain things that you're going backwards when you try to improve upon, like our nutrition.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. People want to, I really think a part of it is that there was such a movement toward science. And I think that the human race kind of, especially in the United States, but certainly all over the world, got a little cocky because as we evolved and so forth, and we started involving science and we thought we could invent foods, things that, and didn't really give much thought about how the body would react to it. But it was just this whole, I don't know that anybody set out initially to mislead everybody. I think it was a perfect storm, but I think it also falls into the powers that be, because it's like, well, yeah, if you keep them fat and dumb and addicted, then we can control them easier. I mean, think about how many people, for example, during the illness that shall not be named, how many people sat glued to the TV and believed every word, that kind of thing. You can
Mhm.
just, and so you control them with fear and stuff. But I don't necessarily think that in the very beginning that people were truly setting out to mislead, but I think they were trying to show, look, we've evolved to this point where we can create foods and medicines to, we're almost like gods in a sense. And it got out of proportion. It just blew up, and it just got to the point to where then people had theories and whatnot that they had invested so much into them that they just couldn't go back. And then you had the food companies that started manufacturing the foods to fall into these guidelines. And then so a lot of people had a lot to lose and have a lot to lose. I mean, from the pharmaceutical companies to the food
Yeah.
companies and
And the
medical
more
profession.
vested they get into it, the more they have to lose, for sure.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
also, things are never black and white. There's always so many facets to all these things,
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, based on what, Miss Teicholtz is, conveying in her book, I don't believe that Ansel Keys woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to figure out how to increase this problem of, heart disease
Right.
and cancer and stuff like that." I don't think he woke up with that intention, but
Yeah.
good intentions can often be skewed by commercial interests, as Lynn points out. And then Carrie brought up I'm going to butcher this quote, but it said something to the effect that mankind was smart enough to invent his own food, but dumb enough to eat it. So,
Yeah, that's a good quote. Yeah, and
Mhm.
there's
that
there's
food
ego with
should-
inventing.
I'm sorry, but that food should have been the food that people prep with. Like if you want all this food from the shelves to keep forever in case there's ever anything that happens that you really need to,
Emergencies.
live on. You need to have some sustenance. Take all that food from the grocery store, stock it up in your house. There you have it. But we shouldn't be eating that on a regular basis when we have a real food to eat.
Right, exactly. Well, and what time is it anyways? We should probably get on to the Mediterranean diet because
Oh,
we're
yeah.
getting. But what we were saying kind of brought me to something that they were talking about in chapter 7 with the Mediterranean diet. And of course, it just now left my brain. All right, it'll come back.
Well, I will tell you the thing that surprised me the most in this whole chapter was olive oil and the fact that its original purpose, it turns out, was not for food, that it was used to make candles and soap, like other oils, that only in about the last 150 or so years has it been widely consumed. That's not to say that no one ever consumed it, but it wasn't this, it wasn't just drizzled onto everything, and everything wasn't just cooked in it, going
And
back
it was used
4,000
for religious
years.
purposes, like for anointing and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was shocked at that. I just thought, based on all the, everything that we've been told, even going back to Homer's Odyssey, that olive oil was used for cooking and, to eat. And it might have been on a very minuscule basis, but not nearly to the level that we've been led to believe. That's just
Right.
wild to me. I was just like, what?
Right. Well, this whole chapter with the Mediterranean diet, it's been interesting because we've all seen the Mediterranean diet come on the scene and become really, really popular. And, I personally have had doctors tell me I need to be on the Mediterranean diet. That's what they tell you. If you need to lose weight, go on the Mediterranean diet. If you need to get healthier, go on the Mediterranean diet. And so, I didn't realize, based on all, like, she does a long history of how the Mediterranean diet evolved. And it's a very, very, it's like 50-page chapter. It was really a long chapter. It was
A
very
lot of information.
interesting. But I did not realize how small of a group it was based on.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they had to kind of narrow it down because they were finding so much variation in the whole Mediterranean region and how people ate. And that went again contrary to what their premise was, that they kept narrowing it down to this really tiny little group of people. And then you find out, like Carrie said, that they historically didn't even eat that much olive oil.
Yeah.
That it was a fairly recent thing, which was interesting. And then I know she was talking about a particular group, and you guys remind me if you can think of it, that they based, maybe this was Ansel Keys in his 7 country study, but she brought it up in this chapter where this one group, that were, I guess, healthy, and they had pretty much a vegetarian diet. And when someone went back later and talked to them, they were like, yeah, but they were miserable.
Yeah.
Like they felt horrible. They were only eating this way because it was after the war. they were in poverty, and
They
before
wanted meat.
and
They
they
were
wanted
craving meat.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
felt awful. And beforehand, before the war, when they had their normal diet, they ate all the meat and everything like, like they should have, and they were a lot healthier. And so they're using this group in this post-war impoverished phase as the basis for this diet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, it's no wonder that you have people eating this diet and they feel the same. They end up feeling terrible and they want meat.
They were not willing vegetarians.
Oh,
No.
no. Oh, they absolutely were not willing vegetarians. And this was just because they had no other choice. And I thought that was really interesting but yet the Mediterranean diet is still considered to be the good. And they talked about too, how they were comparing it with low fat diets. So it was better. It had better outcomes than the low fat diets, but completely ignored the fact that the higher fat, higher saturated fat, meat-based diets had even better outcomes than this diet.
To address what Dustin's saying in this book, I'm not saying that it was never used for cooking, but it was rarely used for cooking in terms of like what we're told. Like, in other words, in everything that they consumed. Actually, they ate mostly lard. That's what they used to cook their food in, was lard.
And there's a possibility, and we'll have to maybe go back and find where she talks about that. But I don't recall whether she said that it was only used for 150 years in that region or if it was total.
Yeah, she had talked about, I know she talked about like Homer's Odyssey, and they talked about the liquid gold, and that
they calling olive oil liquid gold, but it wasn't actually.
And in fact, that was that term was totally, matter of fact, it wasn't even found in the Odyssey at all.
It was oil in a gold flask.
Yeah. And somehow it got, over time, I guess, maybe, or who knows, somebody could have intentionally done it. But anyway, it was referred to as the liquid gold. But I wish I'd written a page number, but I don't think I did.
Yeah, I didn't either. Yes, and they study the diet during Lent. So, yeah.
Yeah. But she did say, she said in there that it was not used primarily for cooking. That's not to say that it never was, but it wasn't a staple in that region they used it, but it was mainly, the majority of it was used for making candles and soap and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What were you saying, Charlie?
One aspect that I thought was really interesting, besides the relatively new use of olive oil as a cooking oil, but she talked about this old ways Mediterranean. They had people on the beach and stuff, all these people from Harvard and, academic institutions. So they were, promoting the heck out of these on essentially kind of like a cruise almost, or a vacation, with an education component mixed into it too. So they were, promoting the so-called Mediterranean diet at these junkets, essentially.
All expense paid.
All expenses
paid.
So
they were holding these conferences. So this organization, and I looked them up, they're still in existence. In fact, let me see if I can share my screen and pull this. Let's see. Old ways. There we go. This is their current website. So, a food nutrition nonprofit. Okay. So they actually still have a website you can look at, and they've got their current food guide pyramid. They've got some other diets here, but I thought just for the heck of it. But so yeah, they're an organization and they still exist, and they're still promoting these basically plant-based diets. Yeah, but they would hold these conferences. So yeah, she talks a lot about that, how they would hold these conferences and they would have journalists and scientists and all these people in the nutrition space and come, and they would, it's like she says that it was very seductive because it was supposed to be to research this Mediterranean diet, but they treated everybody to this luxury vacation and people fell in love with the area. And it kind of became like, how much did that influence? And she also mentioned that if they would pay for you to come, but they expected you then to write a report
Yeah.
about promoting the diet.
Yeah, there was definitely a quid quo pro for
Yeah,
going for free. So
Like
Yeah,
you can have this
mentioned-
luxury spa vacation. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't invited
included
back. They weren't invited back
villas.
if they didn't do a write-up on it.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun club to be in, though.
yeah.
I'd go. Yeah, sounds like a great vacation. And then they got companies to sponsor
Yeah, like a timeshare, exactly.
and pay for them to bring these people. Yeah, to come to this. Yeah, she mentioned that they got all of these different, companies to pay for it. So that's like an all expense paid vacation in exchange for a write-up promoting the Mediterranean diet. Yeah.
Oh, I found that part. And I'll just read this little brief thing. Did the use of olive oil as a food go back much beyond the early 20th century even? Was it the dominant item of the diet going back at least 4,000 years, as Keyes claimed? Amazingly, it seems not. Less than 100 years ago, ordinary people in many parts of Greece ate far less oil than today, wrote a French historian in 1993. Greek archaeologist Yannis Hamilakis, I probably butchered that, who researched the subject extensively, looked at Crete in particular and found that the oil was insignificant as a subsistence crop before modern times. The amount of olive oil available to the average medieval Cretan peasant for consumption was in fact very low, and its production expanded only in the mid-17th century when encouraged by Venetian rulers seeking to respond to a growing industrial demand for the oil, mainly for making soap.
So it sounds
And
like
it
it was
goes on.
really
There's
focused
more,
on Crete.
This
Yeah.
particular part was talking about Crete, but there's a whole lot more. It gets into like in Spain, it says that olive oil did not appear to be consumed in substantial amounts until the 1880s. But I was shocked, like I said, when I read that, because we were just all led to believe that it's just been this staple of the regional diet for, thousands of years. And apparently it was used and people did eat it, but not nearly to the extent that we've been led to believe. It's wild. I was just stunned. That was
I wonder if they just didn't have the olive trees that, like, they didn't necessarily plant, because I know that it has to be a regional thing because olive trees don't grow everywhere.
right.
So I don't know if maybe it was that they weren't growing olive trees as much. I mean, I'm sure olive trees grow beautifully anywhere in the Mediterranean, including Crete, but hard to say. But it sounds like that was specific. She was saying specifically in Crete, they didn't eat it for very long. But that's an important point because this is where the study was based out of. And
This is true too.
they were assuming that all this good health was because of this way they ate, which they hadn't been eating that way for that long.
I just wanted to show my screen here. So, because it shows the Mediterranean diet food pyramid, the preliminary concept that they had. So notice how tiny the lean red meat is at the top. And then the poultry, eggs, and fish a few times a week there. A few times a month for the red lean.
Yeah,
meat.
a few times a month. That's it for red meat.
Yeah, a few times a week.
Lean, not ribeye.
Yes.
I like how their Mediterranean food pyramid has exercise in there too.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, still
And wine.
And wine.
Still at the base are breads and grains, including pasta, rice, couscous, polenta, and bulgur. And then fruits and vegetables is next. Beans, other legumes and nuts, cheese, yogurt, and other dairy products, olive oil and olives. And then, I mean, it's like, where's the beef?
It's barely there.
There is no beef.
One other aspect of, we talked about, the relative use of olive oil as a cooking oil. Then we talked about, the old ways Mediterranean beach conferences that they were having. Another aspect that Nina was kind of conveying here was there's some two ladies, I can't pronounce their names, but one of them was Greek. She was, very disheartened that a lot of the olive trees in the Greek region were just getting cut down. So she, it was
Right.
her belief, again, good intentions, that in order to save the olive trees that, she liked, is it possible to, kind of correlate like a supposedly, the olive oil as a good thing and have it also be good for the region as well. So there's some, commercial interests that, were part of forming this Mediterranean diet as well. And then this other lady, she was formed the Italian arm of that Mediterranean diet, but she was a little bit more skeptical about how a Mediterranean diet is defined, because you got
Right.
that there's more than just Greece and Italy. There's also France and some other areas, some African countries, some Middle Eastern countries. So that's why when they're puzzling over how to define a Mediterranean diet, it's very hard to come to some sort of consensus. And to Dustin's point here, you see, most people think of the Mediterranean diet, think salmon, salads, olive oil, nuts, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't really clear when it was being developed what should count and how to define it, because if a
Right.
Mediterranean diet means one thing to me, but in practice it means something else to you,
Yeah.
it's really hard to form any science or, objective conclusions off of that.
Yeah, and that was her whole point, and she was the primary skeptic because of the fact that there was so much variation throughout the
Mhm.
Mediterranean region in how it was replied. And there was a lot of people who ate a lot more meat, a lot more red meat. And historically, when they weren't in poverty, they had they ate a lot of meat. And so the that's why, as they kind of worked through all this, they narrowed it down to this one little area, or like I think it was two areas, right? Crete and Corfu, where they finally settled in on what would be included in the Mediterranean diet. And it seemed like it was extremely biased, just like everything else. It was
Well, Crete
biased.
and Corfu were used in the studies that Ansel Keys had
Hmm.
used to, I guess that was where the whole idea was formulated, was based on what he found. And then, of course, when you get to looking at the data for that, what is it? Like, it was a fraction. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a fraction of all the meals were actually recorded. So they didn't even though it was
Right.
supposed to be based on, hello, the whole purpose was what they ate. And then they didn't have records of what the vast majority of them ate. So
Right. Right. And then
it's like,
didn't
how did that
didn't he
happen?
say also that even though he did a study with a large group of people, that but they also, in a very small subset of that group, they actually had whatever they ate, they took the same food, same quantity into the lab. But she said that when they compared what people were actually eating versus what the surveys were saying, they were contradictory. So they threw out all the survey data and just focused in on what they collected from a very small subset of that large group. And then with that food, they didn't even say, okay, they ate this much cheese and they ate this many vegetables and they ate this much, beef or, lamb or whatever. They ground it all up and sent it off to a lab to analyze the nutrient profile.
Yeah.
And then when and then because of the fact that they were eating that it was during Lent or whenever it was where they had an unusually low meat consumption,
Mhm.
they said, okay, well, they're getting this much, protein or this many of these vitamins. So they just automatically said, well, then you should be eating lean poultry.
Yeah.
Or in order to get that much of this particular nutrient. It was a completely ridiculous way they did it. So they basically, instead of saying, well, this is what they actually ate, they said this is the nutrient profile, and let's come up with something that has the same nutrient profile. It may not be anything like what they ate, but
I think this was a good analogy in the book. I think this pertained to chapter 6 and the low fat diet, but where they said that basically often they will just they'll get, it's like they're drawing the target around the bullet hole.
Yeah.
yes,
Like
yes.
whatever answer they get, then they're going to change. Oh, let's change our hypothesis around that, or let's pick the hypothesis that best goes with that. It's just not
simply
scientific.
cutting the foot to fit the shoe, or
Yeah.
the way around. So,
And it seems like this is a common trend. We keep seeing these trends through these books.
Oh yeah.
It's just, there's so much bias. There's so much, cherry picking of data. There's so much just drawing the target around the bullet hole.
Yeah.
Yes, that I liked that analogy right there, drawing the target around the bullet hole.
So
You won't
bad.
miss that way.
Well, that's why it gets harder and harder to assume the best of these agencies and these scientists, because okay, maybe initially it's easy to say, okay, yeah, they had our best interest at heart, but after you've got a mountain of evidence that they're ignoring, how do you still think they have our best interest?
Okay, so my thing is, I just don't think there's a they. Like I think it's like so many different. There's no like they.
I don't think
no
it's a central
and
they, but there's a they that works
they should
together.
be our government. But
like you're not going to pull back the curtain and find the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you're not going to do that. But
At
when you pull the curtain back,
I'm not for government even telling me what I should be eating.
Right.
But then I have to think that thought through and say, well, somebody's got to set the standards, or the children won't have proper nutrition. Obviously, it's not the current standards, but we do need to have some sort of standards. But it just feels like they just overreach so much. And I'm afraid that one of these days they're going to overreach so much that people like you and I who choose to eat only meat will have a problem,
Yeah, I fear like one of these days we'll have to clarify that we mean real meat,
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, I feel like it's already heading in that direction because there's a big push for meat substitutes. Now they're talking about people eating bugs, insects. I feel like it's kind of starting to go in that direction anyways.
And I think all those fake meats, they have the American Heart Association, heart healthy check mark. We were talking about earlier with low fat Pop-Tarts. I think the fake meats have that same, endorsement as well. So the other thing we talked about a little bit with Walter Willett. So, part of why the Mediterranean diet has the prestige and prominence that it does is because of, Walter Willett, his connections to, and so it's kind of a confluence of different factors merging into one here. But, the fact that, Harvard is, essentially Harvard is promoting, this Mediterranean diet too, that has all the science backing and whatnot. So Nina talked about how, unlike other diets like Ornish or Atkins, none of those were promoted from an institution as esteemed as Harvard. So that's another reason why it's got boosted up into the stratosphere within a fairly short amount of time, and it's kind of stayed there ever since. I think every time they do like a ranking of the diets and stuff, the Mediterranean is always right near the top. So
yeah.
I agree with
Yeah,
that
Harvard
one.
Law School. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of these supposed teaching hospitals and universities that are, yeah. I mean, if when they start getting into intermeshed with industry, how do you how do you trust them to be unbiased anymore? You know. So a lot of good
That's
comments.
true.
The American, probably the world too, is so tied into the subsidized corn soy production. Yes, of course, they're going to promote products full of these items with seed oils. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we know where that comes from. We saw I don't know if you guys saw it, but and did my little video where I was what was that documentary where they basically showed from an airplane view all of the circles and squares from New York to LA, all the circles and squares were all the cornfields, wheat fields, bean
Wow.
fields, you know, that's
That's
we're just
America.
pumping it out. They said we're just pumping out carbohydrates just as quickly as we can
Yeah.
at a, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
astounding
years ago, I watched the documentary King Corn. Have you ever seen that one?
I've heard of it. I don't
Isn't
think I've
that
seen
one
it.
where they try to see, like, could you create a diet that doesn't have any sort of corn
Well,
derivative in it at all?
I don't remember that being part of it, but I remember that the guys that did the documentary, they were able to utilize, it may have been 5 acres from somebody's farm that they kind of gave them access to. And they wanted to see if they could be profitable planting corn. But it was really fascinating because a lot of the government subsidies, basically, they learned that they interviewed a lot of these corn farmers and they went through and learned so much that they basically, the farmers, they, without the subsidies, they would be at a loss. They would be operating at a loss. So the only way you can actually make any money is through the subsidies. And then they also showed how the vast majority of the corn is inedible. It's being built for production. And you can't like go grab an ear of corn out of the field and eat it. It's disgusting. It's not even edible, but it's grown because it's been produced for mass production, and then like turning in, they tried to get into this place where they turn the corn into high fructose corn syrup, and it was really hard to even get in there. But they showed like this multi-step, like 12 different at least steps and all the
I've seen that
chemicals.
clip.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I've
So
seen that clip.
we're investing in this is our tax dollars, investing in and providing these subsidies for these foods that are not really foods. They're horrible for us. Oh, the magic pill. Interesting. I haven't seen that one.
That's the one you were talking about, right, Kim, with the big fields and stuff. I have seen the Magic Pill documentary. I've seen that one. That's the one where the child had, what is it, AD or autism? Autism.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was such a fantastic documentary that
Mhm.
I not only did a live video and reviewed all my notes that I made points on, but I want to watch it again because I learned so much. And I was just the entire documentary, I was like, pause, writing, pause. Okay, play,
Wow.
pause, It was, yeah, they put the autistic little girl on the keto diet, and she wasn't even verbal, and she was speaking
Yep.
at the end of the video.
A
And
total
her
turnaround.
dad was like, yeah, this is still not as good as we're going to get. I know we can get better.
Better. Yeah.
It was
Wow.
amazing just to see people in their kitchens cooking real food with their families, and things being chopped and diced and sauteed, and it's just such a good feeling, and just such a homey picture. It's what we should all be doing.
And humans did operate that way. It was a communal time. You ate, but it was
Yeah.
partially in celebration, but it was in fellowship.
Mhm.
And you would tell stories. There was the family unit, but then you had the extended family and the tribe, and it was such an important connection. So I think in that sense, people talk about like Americans being so addicted to food, but the food experience, like going out to eat or just eating with people and having fellowship, that part I think is an innate part of being human. But I think where we've gone wrong is that we don't like prepare the meals together and take that extra time. I think that's kind of where we've gone
Yeah,
wrong.
we've lost a lot of that. And it's hard to say too, like you have the people that are in that type of culture and they have a lot better health. And how much is it? I mean, I'm sure part of it is the food, but how much of it is the positive experience around the food? All right. Bye.
Thanks for your
Justin.
contributions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to, the lady from Italy that Charlie was talking about, that was kind of the skeptic around the Mediterranean diet. There's a footnote where she says that she actually had a study of her own, and it showed that the good cholesterol rose when her subjects switched to butter, an effect that was especially pronounced among the women, implying that butter might actually be the healthier option. But of course, that HDL finding from her study was ignored.
Yep.
And yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Because I know they
that's
don't
never
want to.
happened.
Yeah, they don't want anybody to switch to butter. Apparently, I don't know how butter got to be such an enemy when it came to food. I mean, butter makes everything taste better.
Boy, doesn't it?
Well, it was interesting how she was talking too about the chefs that were kind of distressed over these recommendations.
Oh, yeah.
And they were a little bit relieved when they put olive oil on the okay list, because they had been working all this time on the super low fat and the food was terrible. And they knew you need the fat in order for the food to taste good. And so these chefs were like on board with the Mediterranean diet because yay, we can now use fat again. But it must have been hard to not want to be able to use. I mean, you know how it is. Each different fats make your food taste different, right? Like not everybody likes the fruity olive oil taste. Some people like lard, some people like butter.
I remember a few years ago, there was some kind of scandal that a lot of olive oil was found to be cut with inferior oils.
Yep.
So, people, they thought they were buying olive oil, but they were really buying like 10% olive oil
Yes.
and, 90% sunflower.
Cheaper
so part of me
oil.
wonders how long that has been going on. Like once, the Mediterranean diet became, accepted in the commercial space, at what point did they decide, what, let's capitalize on this. Let's cut it with cheaper oils.
Yeah.
Consumers aren't going to know any better.
Well,
And how can we really tell now?
Wasn't it last
Exactly.
week? She mentioned in our last week that they were doing that with butter a long time, like in the 1800s, like the 1860s. They started adding seed oils.
What was it? It was something specifically.
I don't remember the exact one that they were adding, but it was
like with margarine.
Sunflower oil or something?
Yeah, I think they used to make margarine with like coconut oil or something like that before they, figured out how to use the hydrogenated oils.
Of course, coconut oil would be better than for margarine now. Ugh.
Yeah, but I was just surprised that they were adding other oils to butter and letting us think it was pure butter. But have you guys ever made your own butter? It's
I
easy.
have not.
It's
really
easy.
No, but I watched Nisha and Beckett make some recently, and I thought, hey, that looks easy.
Well, if you guys have like a KitchenAid food process, a mixer, it's so easy to do. You got to have a splatter guard though. But you just take heavy whipping cream, like 40%, not the 30% or whatever, 40% heavy whipping cream, and you just whip it. And at some point, you're gonna have to put a towel over it because right at the very end, all of the buttermilk splatters around, but you end up with a big chunk of butter, and then you just put it in cheesecloth and let it, and strain the rest of the liquid, let it drain, and you got butter. You can add salt or you can not add salt. And I used to make my own butter, and it's super easy. Yeah. So if you want to know that your butter's pure, you can make it yourself.
Carrie, you need to watch Nisha's video where her and Beckett make it. It's really cute. And I love that she's cooking with Beckett because it shows just how easy a lot of these recipes are, that we think it's a big deal. Oh, we don't have any butter. We got to go get some butter. Just make some.
Oh yeah,
I'll have to watch
will.
that. I may do a video of me trying to make butter, and if nothing else, it'll be funny.
it's fun,
Yeah.
especially when it splatters
Yeah.
all over the place. But I used to make my own yogurt too in my Instant Pot, and with just whole milk and some probiotic capsules,
Uh-huh.
and just sprinkle the probiotics in there and you can make I would make Greek yogurt in my Instant Pot, and yeah,
Oh,
it
I
takes
recently
longer.
I recently tried to add Greek yogurt back in, and I just can't do any dairy. I hope one day, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not doing dairy either. The only thing I can do right now is ghee, and I actually can do a little bit of butter here and there, but I have to be careful.
Now, Kim, I will tell you, when I added back in my Greek yogurt initially, I ate way too much in one sitting. So I added it
That would
back
be
like
me.
in small amounts. And
Uh-huh.
so I don't eat a ton of it even now, but I was able to add it in just at a smaller, because I was over enthusiastic when I added it in. It was sort of an impulse, and my daughter had given me some because she knew I had liked that brand, and she didn't realize I wasn't eating it at the
Yeah.
time. And it wasn't intentional that I wasn't eating it. But anyway, so it was in there, and I had eaten my dinner, burger patties and whatnot. And I was like, that yogurt sounds good. And I ate like a large amount. And so
Yeah.
I was disappointed because it tasted so good. So
Oh,
then,
it did taste so good.
yeah, someone
I was
suggested that
dipping my steak in it.
someone suggested that I try a smaller amount. And so
Yeah.
I did do that, but now I still don't eat. I don't test it. Like, I don't eat like just a ton of it, but I've been able to do well eating a couple times a week or so, a small little bowl. I don't measure it. I don't know how much is in it, but
I'm
so,
hoping one of these days, but for now, unfortunately it flared my
oh,
chronic candida. So yeah, my
mm,
scalp started itching like within,
Ooh,
6, 7 hours.
oh,
It's like that, you know.
yeah. I know there's some things that we may not ever be able to add back. I don't know. I'm kind of in the same boat you are. Just kind of you try something and then you react to it. And it's like, I guess I
yeah,
can't have that. But
And
you know,
I mean, lots of people every day eat stuff that they react to. They have no clue. Like people just think that they're just supposed to go around with stopped up nose all the time, or postnasal
bloated,
drip, or itchy scalp, or psoriasis, or whatever it may be,
or they're
bloating.
bloating or
They just think,
gas.
oh, it's just normal. Once you get to a certain age, that's just the way it is. And your doctor will agree. If you go to
Joint
see your
mhm,
pain.
doctor, they'll tell you, oh, you're just over 40. You're supposed to feel this way. So, it just so happens that I am not willing to accept not feeling good, because I know I have felt it. I have felt what carnivore does for me, and I can't go back. It's like I was watching, I think it was what is her name? Nia.
Mm-hmm.
oh,
It's
Nia,
Nia's
NEAH.
Way. Yeah, she's really good. I like her.
Mhm,
But she's really smart and just thoughtful, provoking. And she was just talking about how, once your eyes are open, you just can't go back. You can't unlearn this stuff.
Right.
I'll never be able to just sit and eat 6 donuts again. Womp womp.
I've had to redefine what deprived means because, you feel like, oh, I'm deprived because I can't eat XYZ foods, right? And I've just had to redefine what deprived means.
Yeah,
And to me, if I do eat that, I'm depriving myself of good health.
exactly.
I'm depriving myself of feeling bad. It's not that I'm deprived because I'm not eating garbage food. And that was a mental shift for me, because it's easy to go, like, especially when you're going to social, places and everybody else is eating all that stuff. And you start to feel like, oh man, I feel so deprived. And I've just had
Yeah.
to tell myself, no, I'm not.
So so it's not really so much anymore that I feel deprived or that I really want something. It's just, I don't know. It's just, in that social situation, you just feel like you're not fully participating,
Yeah.
or you just feel like, I always feel like the Debbie Downer, Today I was going to suggest that my husband, his sister's in from Denver, and I was going to suggest that we all go out to eat. But then I'm like, if I do that, I'm just going to feel like garbage. Even if I just eat meat, it's going to be cooked in some nasty oil. I don't even want to do it. And it just makes me feel like I'm just like the Debbie Downer of the group. And
You know what? Olive Garden will clean their grill, clean the oils off their grill, and will cook it in butter or ghee if you ask them to. I know that.
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It is good to
I
know.
just don't enjoy, I just don't like eating out like I used to.
I don't either.
It's not really fun for me anymore. It doesn't taste as delicious as the food that I make here. So I don't know. I'm boring now, y'all.
I've been to a couple of local carnivore meetups or local carnivore keto meetups and stuff, and they're usually at restaurants that, I don't know. It's like like there's one place that sold meat by the pound, but I could never get a straight story on whether they pre-sauced their meat or not. So I wound up, hoping for a brisket, but then I couldn't get a straight answer as to how they prepared it. So I wound up, ordering pulled pork instead, because that was the only thing I got a straight story on, and that they didn't, sauce. But when you go to these meetups, the point isn't to have good food. It is to meet like other people and stuff. And I've had to kind of retrain myself on that, because, weeks, years after that event occurred, I'm going to remember the people that I've met and stuff. I'm not going to remember what I ate at that point. So it's
Right.
it's taking some relearning that I'm still going through on my part to separate the people aspect from, the food aspect, because a lot of times they're intertwined.
Well, and I don't know about you, Charlie, but anywhere I would go, it would be almost like a thing beforehand. I would think, oh, my husband's Christmas party, I can't wait to go there because I know they're going to have dun, dun, dun. And I would have it all planned out in my mind, what I was going to eat. And it was just like, that would be the highlight. It wouldn't be for me that I get to go and see all these people. I mean, I like to do that. That was fun too. But for so long, that addict, people question when I call myself a food addict. I really was like, it was what I centered the entire experience around. It was the most important thing for me, and that shouldn't be. And now, one thing that I love about myself now is I am learning to have a relationship with food as fuel. And sometimes I get so almost like bored with it, like I'm just like, and that not really bored with it. I probably said the wrong thing, but I get in such a frame of mind where I'm just so busy. I want to do this, like things that are actual real things in my life that I'm working on and doing, that I just want to go pick up 2 burger patties and just gnaw on them real quick and then go back. And I love that.
Sometimes I do that.
That is the ultimate food freedom for me, and I
Yeah.
never thought it would come through carnivore. Like I said, I never even wanted to try carnivore. It's just, I just happened to try it because I heard someone else had cured her chronic candida. And I'm so happy I did, because not only did I help that, now I'm not saying if I eat dairy, it won't come back, because it will. So it's not a cure, but I've kept it at bay. So that's cure enough for me. As long as I don't eat the poison, then I'm not going to be poisoned.
Yeah.
But
And I know this doesn't involve Charlie,
so much
unfortunately, but
more.
both of you, have you joined the Meat Sisters Facebook group?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I'm not on Facebook, or I would.
Okay. Cause I referred somebody to you, Kim. One of the new members mentioned, can carnivore help with chronic candida?
Oh.
And I told her to look you up. So
Okay.
I didn't know you were already in the group. Otherwise I would have actually tagged you. Maybe I'll go back and find it and tag you.
I don't really go in there. I don't do a whole lot on Facebook. I'll post and go, on Facebook. So but yeah, that's interesting.
Yes, and any of you watching, and I know it's an exclusively women's group. So sorry, guys. But if Meat Sisters is a fairly new and growing rapidly Facebook group.
Who started that?
Emily from Steak and Butter Gang, and Lindy, Limitless Lindy.
Okay. Yeah, I
Oh,
knew Lindy.
I love Lindy. She's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, both of them are going to be there with me and the crew, the Healing Humanity crew at Austin. We're all going to be staying in the same place
Oh, cool.
together. So I'm going to actually get to hang out and let them get to know them better. So that'll be cool.
Well,
You
I
guys
love
need to
your
come
sister.
to the Low Carb for Better Health.
So I actually was looking at
I want
flights.
to go to that.
I was looking at flights today. I talked to my husband, and he's fine with me going. He wants to see how I do with my MCAS on our Austin trip, because heat is my huge big trigger, and it's going to be August in Tennessee. And so I don't want to end up either in the hospital or needing to stay the whole time in an air-conditioned hotel room because I'm getting flared up.
Yeah. Well, you have
So-
a nurse, so I'll
And
be
I'm a
there.
nurse, but I can't do that for myself. But
I know, but you can't nurse yourself.
Nurse,
so.
heal yourself.
Yeah, you may have to give me
it would be
some IV
perfect if
fluid.
you could come and you could meet my daughter.
I would love
and
that.
we could just
I
hang
want
out
to
and
come.
stuff. I would love to see you guys in person. And this is a smaller, I mean, it's a very good one. Like last year was fantastic, and Dustin was at last year's, and it was really, really good. But it's it's small enough to be intimate, yet they have good speakers. So
Yeah.
I encourage you to come.
Well,
I think
I
it would
brought
be
it up at our
awesome.
last Healing Humanity crew meeting this past week as a possibility. So there's a chance that maybe the Healing Humanity crew might end up there.
Oh,
I
need to.
hope so.
Listen, there's a lot of really good. Like it's a small. It looks like a small group, but man, there's some good ones going.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember exactly who it is. Carrie, do you remember? I know Dr. Berry, Nisha,
Dr. Palmer is going to be there.
Dr.
Yes.
Palmer. I was super excited about that. I really want to meet him. I mean, or just see him live. I don't really need to.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Possibly I may end up going with the crew, and we may end up doing some filming and stuff.
That would be very cool. I'm like getting so excited.
Yeah, wherever we end up going as a crew, we're probably going to end up having a Healing Humanity meetup, and so that'll be announced. So if we all end up there in Tennessee, then
it'd be great. Amy Berger, Amanda
Berger,
Decker,
love her. Yes,
Nisha, Dr. Berry, Dr. Mark Karkazula, and I've seen some of his stuff. I'm not as familiar with him, but I've seen some of his things. Dr. Chris Palmer, Roxana Sodenbeer, I think is how you say the
I don't
name.
know her.
Zane Griggs, which is who Dr. Berry wrote the book, Kicking Butt Over 50. Yeah. And Tia Reed. So that's the people that are on the list. So it's the, and I'm not affiliated with them. So hopefully it's okay for me to say this on our stream, but it's on August 23rd and 24th. And it's at Montgomery Bell Park it's outside of Dixon, Tennessee. So it's a very nice state park. They have updated cabins if you want to get a cabin. My daughter and I just got a room at the lodge, but the lodge rooms are nice too. So I encourage you, if you can, it'd be a nice getaway.
Yeah, I'm gonna put the link. I'm gonna put the link in the chat.
For me, it's like 3 hours and 49 minutes, but it would be worth it.
Now, my daughter and I are going on Friday. There's two separate things. Like there's the dinner and stuff that's on Friday evening. And so we are going to be there for the Friday evening one, as well as the main event on Saturday. So it's kind of actually two separate things, but it is for, both Friday and Saturday.
Yeah. Well, if I go, of course, I'll be flying. I will I have a family member who's moving to the Nashville area next month.
So then you might be able to be a regular visitor.
It'll probably be an opportunity for me, obviously, to go and see them. And so that'll be my my one nephew got hired by he's an attorney, got hired by the DA, the state district attorney's office. And so he's moving his whole family out there. So,
all right, Charlie, where are you located? Maybe you can come.
I'm in Indianapolis, so I don't know. I'm going to see if other folks from the area plan to go to that low carb conference in August, because I really don't like long distance driving, but I'm willing to carpool, for that.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't like long distance driving either.
Yeah, see if you can find some more local carnivores. Yeah, maybe you can carpool. That'd be great. Yeah, it would be. It's just so nice, the thought of actually meeting everybody in person.
Yeah.
It's, it's funny. And of course, this is just me thinking. I'm thinking I could see, like, we're so comfortable, online. What if we like meet each other? We're like so awkward.
Nah, I don't think so.
No, listen, especially with us talking face to face like this on a regular basis, I think you really kind of get to know somebody's personality, especially like before the show, we kind of talk informally and we're more, I don't want to say we're more ourselves, but we're just kind of like, laid
just
back.
Taz, this is me.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just think that I think we know each other pretty well on a basic level. I know I met Nicole in person, and we were kind of thinking that, like, we thought, well, what if we meet and it's like weird or something? But it was exactly the same as it is.
That's good to know.
Here on, online.
I've got to get Nicole this information. I don't think I've told her. I think I might have mentioned it to her, but I don't think I told her that I actually got the tickets and made the reservations and everything. But yeah, not that me being there is going to be a selling point, but I'm just saying I want to see my peeps.
Yes. It's so funny because it's just so nice to have people who understand you,
Oh, yeah.
It sounds so silly that you could have like friends where, oh, we eat the same thing. Like, how basic is that? What would you,
well, when you eat as weird as we do, that means so much.
Yeah, it really does. I don't know. I just get tired of answering all the questions and getting all the looks and even like, and there are people that, like, I can tell when they're eating their food, they think I'm judging them. And I'm like, I swear I'm not judging you. Like,
yeah.
I know, it's just, I have to do me and I have to do what's best for me. And now I will say, if it's a close friend or family member and they are talking about a specific symptom they're having, I have to fight the urge to say, oh, if you would quit eating that stuff, you probably wouldn't have that, but I don't do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you can create community over just eating meat.
Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. Carnivores are the coolest people and low carb people in general. But man, the carnivore community is amazing. Like, everybody's nice, open, chill. For the most part, you'll have your jerks no matter what group you belong to. But I don't think the carnivore community has the fewest jerks that I've seen in an online community.
Well,
you have to have a certain amount of, like, well, you have to be open-minded to trying new things, right? And you have to have a certain type of personality to actually stick to carnivore, because it's very, like, it's simple, but it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination. Like, it's, especially in the beginning. Now it's a lot easier for me, but just the mental, like, turmoil that goes on in your brain of, should I be, maybe I'm actually not, maybe these people are wrong. Like, you just keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
And, even now, there are some days when I think, are you just killing yourself? Was that chest pain you felt? Now, I'm a little neurotic though. So that's it. That's just me. So.
Yeah, I stopped worrying about that, but I know what you mean. Initially, yes, because we're going against all the recommendations. So, when you're a carnivore, you're pretty much a rebel.
Yeah.
You are on your
I've
own.
always been a rebel.
Yeah.
I just do what other people don't do.
So we're independent.
You pretty much turn to the dark side at that point, right?
That's right. That's right.
Especially when you tell them that you cut out the vegetables, then they kind of look at you like you're crazy.
Like, how
that's my favorite question too. Is I'm a carnivore. But do you eat vegetables? You eat vegetables though, don't you? And you're like, no, not, I mean,
That
I
would be an
will if
omnivore.
I want to, I will. I just so happen to never want to.
Right.
Yeah, I eat things that ate vegetables. Does that count?
Doesn't
I
count.
know what
Nope.
vegetables taste like. Does that count? Oh, guys, I forgot to tell y'all. I went to the dentist this week.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh boy. Okay. So first of all, me and my hygienist, we just have this special little bond in my mind anyway. She's the sweetest. I just love her to death. But the last time I went, I saw another hygienist. And before that, because of my Invisalign, I had not gone for a long time just because I thought I would just wait, till I got my brackets off. And so I haven't seen her in probably a couple of years. And she just kept going on and on. She was like, you look so good. I can tell you've lost lots of weight. What are you doing? And so I'm like, should I tell her? So I told her. And at that point, she was just like, oh my gosh, tell me. And so I told her all about it. And we were just like vibing the entire time. And she said, you know what? She said, you hardly have any tartar buildup on your teeth. She said, and your gums look great and your skin looks amazing. Like she was just gushing. And I told her about my YouTube channel, so I don't know if she checked it out or not, but, but then we talked to the dentist about it. And he said, well, okay, I get it. But he said, what about, don't you think carnivore is just one of those fad diets? And I said, no, I don't. And I said, as a matter of fact, what do you think your ancestors ate? I mean, and he said, well, just how keto's a fad diet. And I said, keto's the same way. What do you think your ancestors ate? The fad diet is all the processed stuff in boxes and bags with barcodes.
Well, fad diets are popular and people want to do them.
Well, isn't that the truth? I don't think carnivore and keto are necessarily fads, especially like very low carb. Some people will do like low carb and, and they think they're doing keto. Some people, when they reduce their carbs. But I mean, to really be like ketovore and stuff, you do have to go against the grain, so to speak, because, and you're right, it's not easy either. But it's so worth it. It's easy for me because I'm lazy. I've never been a cook. I mean, I cooked for my kids and stuff because I needed to, or, I mean, you know what I'm saying, but I mean, for myself, just me by myself, I don't see any reason to just cook up a bunch of stuff. And so it's so easy for me.
It is so easy. And it's just, I don't know, like, I just love the fact that I don't have to sit and dwell on food constantly anymore. I cook a bunch up, I separate it out into portion size containers, I put it in the freezer, and then each day I'll pull one out, take it to work with me. I mean, it's just so easy.
Yeah, it is true food freedom, that's for sure.
Arlene has a question. I even tell younger people and just say, in case, someone's sick or older like myself who needs help on their diet or kidneys or whatever, mentions this to them. Would you? Absolutely, Arlene. I tell all the young people at work and I say, okay, right now you can eat everything that you want. And you probably won't feel the effects of it. But I'm just going to tell you that when I was your age, my mom tried to warn me and tell me that whatever I ate, I was gonna, it would have an effect on me, and I didn't believe her. But I can tell you now that she's right.
Yeah, it catches up with you.
I think that's amazing. My medical team hates me. I've lost weight, got healthier, and I'm watching all of them go downhill over the last 3 years. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Well, fortunately, you probably don't have to go see them anymore.
Yeah. And that's true. You think they want to copy what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it goes against them. So, alrighty. So, do you guys want to do 2 chapters again next time?
So, listen, I think we should limit it to 1 because we like to chat a bunch, and these chapters are really long and really just, they're intense.
We don't have a limit like we have to get this done in a month. I mean, we can take a whole year to do it if we want to.
We only have 3 chapters left.
I think it's only 3. I think that's right.
Now, and I, like I said, I don't beforehand. I don't know if I'm going to be able to be here the next couple weeks because we got family coming in this coming weekend because of my daughter's wedding, and then the following weekend is her wedding, and we're going to be taking people back to the airport and all that. So I
Okay.
may be absent for 2 weeks potentially.
Okay.
So if you
Charlie,
guys want to do
are
one,
you going to be around?
Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, I should be around next week. So
Not that
Cool.
anybody can replace Lynn. Okay.
No,
But-
not
Oh, it's
everybody
not-
can. But
oh no, you guys will be
Lynn,
fine.
you carry us, honey. You
I
carry
will still read, and if I can, I will definitely jump in.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
that'd be
but
good.
I just don't know enough yet about like specifically when everybody's coming. Like my sister is flying in Saturday, but then we have other family trickling in Sunday. And okay, so my main thing is my brother and sister-in-law, they're coming Sunday, and they're the ones that I have kept a secret that I have even been on losing weight. Like the last time they saw me, I was like 350 pounds.
Well, you could bring them on the show.
Get a
But I
reaction,
wanna
a live
I
reaction.
want to film their reaction when they see me.
Oh,
Because
that'd be awesome.
yeah, because one of the last times I saw them, they actually sat me down and told me they were so super concerned about my health. And so they have not seen me since then. So it's like I've been promising my viewers on my channel that I would make sure to film when they see me. So if they're showing up, when I'm doing this, I'm going to not be able to be here, but
Yeah.
but if it's outside of the time frame, then I will be able to be here. So
Yeah, and if nothing else, if you wanted to, you could just pop in the chat and say, "Tell them this." We can put it up on the screen.
I'm going to play it by ear. We'll see how things
Okay.
go, but it's going to be it's a busy couple
Yeah.
of weeks down, for us with the wedding.
Well, we
and everything.
understand, and just do what you can, and if you can't, you can't. And I'm sure there are going to be times when all of us are unable to. And I need to change the permissions so that if ever I can't be here, that you guys could,
Yes.
carry on
Yes.
in my memory. No.
Carry on.
Carry on.
you guys want to see a quick before picture of myself I found on my computer?
Yes.
Yeah. Show
Let's
us.
see if I can share it. Window. Oh, here it is.
Oh wow!
Oh my word!
So that's probably
What a
170 pounds ago. So
what a
Charlie, you need to do a
amazing.
channel, man. You do.
right.
And you're so well spoken. You would do a wonderful job.
You need your own
I
channel.
don't know. It seems like a lot of work. I appreciate the work that you guys do, but
It's
I'm more
a
than
lot of
happy
work,
just
but
to
it's
jump
fun.
in every once in a while. So.
Yeah. No, it's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody.
true.
But
It's a lot of work.
wow.
Sometimes you have to have the desire and the love for just YouTube in general, or it'll just go away. You got to stay on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I appreciate the content that you ladies put up. I watch it quite a bit, and
awesome.
I'm still in a healing journey of my own too, just at different rates and stuff. But
it's all very
I get a lot out of it. So
yeah,
it's definitely all very individual, and we all have our own journey. And and I know I've been a little more absent from my own channel recently just because of the wedding coming up. But after the wedding, I'm hoping to be doing more, putting more out there. So,
well, we appreciate you joining us because
Yes.
it's a big help to have an extra person to contribute what they got out of the book. So
yeah, absolutely. Love to get a face behind the name too. The YouTube name. So awesome.
All
See,
right,
I think we're already inspired by your before picture. That's great.
Yeah. All right. So
one chapter next week.
Yeah. So
let's do
one chapter. So that'll be chapter 8. And I guess we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
This has been great, you guys.
Yes, I really enjoyed this week.
I know we went long, but we had nice chat. So that was
Yeah.
Went
good.
by so fast.
I know it sure does.
Have a good evening,
All
lady.
right.
All right.
Have a good evening. Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.